Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to say that women are the driving force behind the clean cooking transition. Why? Because it's women that procure and process cooking fuels, work in sales. In fact, it's been documented that women sales agents outsell their male colleagues 3-1. They're leading enterprises, including thermal-based productive activities. They're implementing policies and they're structuring finance. Despite all odds, young women and older persist in the face of obstacles and insist on building a better future for all. Far too long, however, the conversation around gender and energy and gender and clean cooking has focused on women as victims, suffering the disproportionate impact of poor health and safety, or merely as passive beneficiaries receiving improved solutions delivered by well-meaning actors. While true, this historic narrative does not reflect the current reality, and that's what we are here to say today. Accelerating clean cooking is a critical tool for empowering women and for advancing gender equality. Women are essential to the widespread adoption and use of clean cooking solutions. Their agency as household decision makers, yes, as decision makers, and consumers should not be underestimated. Their involvement as employees and entrepreneurs helps businesses thrive, particularly in those very difficult markets that challenge conventional distribution chains. Their leadership in policy and finance is essential to progressing and achieving scale. This session will delve into the stories and experiences of women leaders working across the sector, as policymakers, as entrepreneurs and investors, discussing their unique issues and experiences impacting women and how can they ensure that both women and men have equal opportunities to lead, participate in, and benefit from a just and inclusive energy transition. It's my pleasure, therefore, to introduce you to our panelists. I'm going to start from my furthest left, Dr. Faith Wandera Odongo, a Senior Deputy Director at the Renewable Energy at the Ministry of Energy in Kenya. Kalinda Maglory, who's here to my left, immediate left, CEO of Switch, based in Haiti. Rejoice Ossie Brembag, seated next to Faith, who's a researcher at the Cape of Good Hope Techno University in South Africa, but Rejoice is from Ghana, so she's one of our hosts. Benedict Bloem, director from Big Capital based in the Netherlands. You're all very much welcome to this panel discussion. To start our discussion, Faith, allow me to start with you. And I'd like to start with you by reflecting on the enabling environment for women's entrepreneurship and leadership. Faith, one of the key learnings, both from clean cooking but also in the gender sector, is that policies do matter. I'm trying to see if my 53 years of age can allow me to read, but unfortunately it doesn't. I have to put my glasses back on. So policies do matter, Faith. But the key question is that we need to ask is, which are those governments and policymakers around the world that are truly rising to the challenge posed by the gender just inclusive energy sector? Faith, allow me to humbly shine the light on Kenya. And why? Why is Kenya a champion country? This is because Kenya is the first country in Africa and actually the first country in the world to implement its own gender in energy policy, which aims to raise the level of gender awareness, change attitudes, and promote an engendered work culture in the energy sector and the clean cooking sector. So Faith, as one of the key drivers of this achievement within your ministry, could you kindly share with us key lessons from Kenya's journey of successfully launching a policy that brings together gender, energy, and clean cooking, and how this can potentially be replicated by other African countries, but indeed all around the world? Faith, the floor is yours.
I think we have to share.
Yeah, she will use that one, and then you can...
Thank you very much, Sheila, for the question. I'll bring forward some of the lessons I've learned about implementing the gender policy in Kenya. And these involve around achieving sustained promotion of gender sensitivity within the whole energy sector. And when I say the whole energy sector, I'm talking about the ministry as the central ministry coordinating energy issues. I also talk about the parastatals, which we call them SAGAs, state agencies, semi-autonomous government agencies. And we have used these policies, the gender policy, which was developed in 2019, to sensitize staff within the ministry and the SAGAs to implement gender-sensitive programs and projects. And further, we have gone further to also sensitize the counties. You know, the devolved government. We have trained people who are implementing clear energy issues in the counties to take into account gender considerations when they are developing energy programs and planning. I could particularly draw on the COSAP project, the GCF climate-friendly cooking project. These projects have got very strong gender components that require gender sensitivity in reporting the data that is collected. And I could also bring in the clean cooking strategy that is being developed currently and the electric cooking strategy. These strategies also have very strong gender components that require that whatever data we are using in the strategy development has gender components reflected. Then the policy has also enabled us to respond to the constitutional requirement to mainstream gender and also promote gender equality and equity. And further, we have been able to also complement the government requirement for procurement that puts women and youth at the fore to gain 30% of the procurement processes within the government. The other lessons that we have learned is that we have provided the framework on which to develop performance contracting and report on gender within the energy sector. This is pertinent because the performance contract within the Ministry of Energy is, should I say, it falls under the docket of the principal secretary. So when you put targets in a performance contract, you are essentially saying this is something I'm going to deliver on. And getting gender targets into the performance contract for us is a great milestone that helps us in ensuring that whatever work we do in the Ministry of Energy has, we achieve gender targets. It has also enabled us to develop a tool for monitoring the activities within the semi-autonomous government agencies to the effect that the SAGAs have got a procedure for reporting. They just fill in the information regarding the kind of training they have done at their level, the kind of setup within the staffing system, the women representation in the boards. And for us, this is a milestone and something that we are proud of as Kenya, to be able to use this policy to do some of these things. I think I'll stop there and give back to you, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Faith. So it's not just a question of having the policy, but it's ensuring that policy is implemented and translated into planning at local authorities. You've mentioned that you then translate it into your programs. And most importantly, it's also a performance indicator for the highest level of decision making as well. So those are some of the lessons that I heard from you, Faith, which is very powerful. Faith, I'd like to ask you a next question, but I'd like this to be much more personal. We have known each other, Faith, for the past 17 years. I think the other day we were speaking, we reckoned that it was in 2005. I said 2000, but you said 2005, so I've made it 17 years. And I have seen the incredible journey that you have made and how you have inspired and influenced the change that you have just spoken of in the clean cooking, in the gender, but also in geothermal as well. You're one of the first people who started speaking about gender in geothermal as well. So some of the incredible change that you have brought to the ministry. And I congratulate you on that. But there have also been challenges, Faith, and I think we also learn from sharing and celebrating our failures. So Faith, could you also share with us your story of some of the challenges that you have faced as a female leader, and give us, from your perspective, how we can encourage and empower more women, particularly young women, to take leading roles in the clean cooking sector?
Thank you again, Sheila. My experience speaking about gender mainstreaming has been a long journey, as you say. And I would say it's not an easy journey, because I don't think everybody understands when we talk about gender issues. And there's a lot of explaining that needs to be done before it sinks down in people's minds. What exactly are we talking about when we promote gender mainstreaming? But I thank God that our administration in the Ministry of Energy listened, and they brought us the far that we have come in mainstreaming gender in the energy sector. So my lesson from this is persistence helps. If you keep pushing, people will finally get the gist of what you're saying, and they will take it forward. But you need to be courageous enough and speak out and ensure that what you are speaking is sinking into people's minds. Then the other challenge has been following the new constitution, the devolution of services to the counties. The administration changes is cyclic every 5 years. So this does not really make it easy for us to propagate the message of gender mainstreaming, because within these 5 years, you have trained a group of people. Then the next 5 years, you have a different set of people coming into the counties. That makes it very challenging. You need to have resources, you need to have the time, you need to have the patience, you need to plan for it. And therefore, it makes it very challenging in terms of the continuity of the gender message within the counties. Then the other thing is about financing. I think it took us a long time to get a budget for gender mainstreaming in the ministry, but at least we finally got that to support the gender mainstreaming activities. And even when it came, the financing was lumped together with other administration expenditures, which leaves it at the heart of whoever is dispensing the financing to choose whether to give the gender officer the finances to do her work or not. Lumping these finances together is not very good. I think for gender mainstreaming to succeed in the energy sector, it needs, the gender officer needs their own budget to do their own activities, rather than tying it to other activities. Then, regarding what we could do to promote young girls or empower more women in the energy space, we need to learn to identify them at a young age. When we did the agenda audit in 2007, the agenda audit of the energy policy, what we established was that, some of these girls, when they are growing up, they are geared towards certain disciplines, and they shy away from entering the science, technology disciplines. But I think that is changing a lot now, and we have many more girls venturing into the STEM area. And I think this is encouraging in the sense that as we get more women getting into the science, technology, mathematics, engineering, then we have more representation within the energy sector, because energy sector is highly technical, And if you haven't gotten into these disciplines that we're talking about, sometimes it's a bit difficult to penetrate the energy sector. The other thing that we could do is to mentor entrepreneurs in their respective fields and help them to grow. I think Nigeria has supported some women entrepreneurs in Kenya to do their businesses in clean cooking and solar PV businesses. And this is something that needs to be encouraged. The other one is award ceremonies that can be held at national, local, international levels. These need to be sustained. I know there have been some award ceremonies, but I think maybe the regularity of holding these is not very high, so not many women are getting into the energy sector through that channel. I think I'll stop there, Chila, and give back the...
Thank you very much, Faith. And so from Kenya, let's cross oceans and go to Haiti. Kalinda, my next question is for you. Faith was talking about celebrating awards, and I'm pleased to maybe be the first person at this conference, maybe publicly in one of the forums, to say that we will soon be celebrating your achievements as one of the winners of the 2022 Clean Cooking Women's Leaders Award. A very big congratulations for that recognition. And Faith, while I was reading about the work that you do and reading your bio, this recognition, in my opinion, is very well deserved. Given the great work that the company Switch that you co-founded, and in fact your CEO, is doing to deliver not just the return on your investment, but social impact. Social impact that really has a vision of converting Haitian households from charcoal to LPG at scale. Kalinda, what lessons can you share from the perspective of a company that has successfully mainstreamed gender into its operations? And how do you see this as contributing to the improvement of the lives of women by switching to cleaner energy?
Thank you. Thank you. I see that you have the scoop. So I thank CCA very much for this honor. I'm very honored and humbled to receive this, and I receive it in the name of my team, composed mostly of women. And to go back to your question, first I have to confess, it was a journey. I was off track when we started Switch. My country is marred by a big deforestation issue. It's very fragile when you think about climate change, and you see it physically even when you land to Port-au-Prince. And this was our first concern. I wanted to give my children the same green environment that I had growing up, and I saw it disappearing because of the use of charcoal. I wanted to do something about it. And we started Switch, and that was 10 years ago. But then I started meeting people, collaborating with studies done by Energia, talking to the beneficiaries, the street vendors, everyone, and realized that environmental was important, but it was mostly and foremost a gender issue. But it was a process for me, and I'm kind of glad I've done that process, because it's easier for me now to, I would say, hold hands with whether my colleagues or the counterparts or the beneficiaries to help them do the same process. It didn't, down on me at first that it wasn't a gender issue, and now nobody will make me shut up about gender. So it's a process, and it happened in various stages. The first thing was when we decided to convert street vendors. So at least 1 meal per day in Haiti is taken in the streets by at least 80% of the population. So street vendors are a big deal. And most of them are able only to cook 1 meal. The ones that are in front of the industrial park, for instance, they will choose breakfast or lunch, because it takes so long to ignite the fire with charcoal that they are not able to be ready to do 2 meals. And converting to LPG made these street vendors another level of entrepreneurs. They could give meals to way many people and give 2 shifts. So that was a first empowerment, and financial and economic and entrepreneurial empowerment for them. We had the same experience in the school kitchen, where many women started that as a side job and realized they could not do anything else. If they wanted to cook for 600 children, they had to be there at 4 a.m. and leave after the lunch was served at 2. Many of them had aspirations to go to school and do other things, and it's only when these schools were converted to LPG that they were able to get morning courses and then come and do the meals. So, and these examples are not even talking about the most obvious, which is the women in the households who are cooking and who don't have time to do other things. Now, this is all very empirical. I have to say that the study we did, I think it was almost 8 years ago, that Energia did about why women want clean cooking, and that I had the privilege of reviewing along with the nascent at the time network of women in the WLPGA organization, showed me a lot of things in the theory. How can we engage women? How can we change voice to agency? Because voice is one thing. Having the beneficiaries say what they want is one thing, but it's not agency yet. How do you get to agency? And now we are in a process of formalizing all of that with our gender action plan. And I have to thank CCA and their program in Haiti, especially the person in charge of the enterprises, Regine, and the person in charge of the focal point for gender, Marie-Claude, who are helping us do this process of really, I would say, methodologically seeing what are the criteria, what we can achieve in this year, how can we give the women inside the companies more agencies, and of course our beneficiaries, how can we, in a more, I would say, strategic manner, integrate their inputs into the way we do things.
Thank you very much. And I like what you said about being very intentional about your gender mainstreaming process, and that you also just really broke it down. A lot of times when we talk about gender mainstreaming, it becomes very abstract, and I really like the way you gave very concrete examples. So Kalinda, moving from the lessons from your companies to your own leadership journey, you said it was a process for you. So just dwelling into that. Kalinda, you might be surprised or interested to learn that from an OECD IEA, International Energy Agency report, you talked about Energia's work 8 years ago. This is a report that was done in 2001. And this says that you are amongst the only 10.8% of women in senior roles in renewable energy firms. So first we heard from the whole sector renewable energy was doing well, but actually when you really deconstruct that and see where women are placed, you find that we're quite few in senior roles. Why do you think it's important that we address this gap by having women in leadership positions? And what lessons that you have faced in your journey and as a CEO and an entrepreneur that provides advice that you can give to women with similar ambitions to grow in the clean cooking sector?
Yeah, that number is really low. And again, we experience it every day. Of course, CCA is a very inclusive and gender supportive environment, so we don't feel it here. But when we go to other types of forum, for instance, when I go to the ones that are only dedicated to LPG, I'm often the only woman in the room. And why should we be in leadership position? I think it has been said over and over for the past 24 hours. We are the one that should be at the forefront of this battle because we are the one living it. And I mean, the stakes are there for us. I have to say, personally, I was very lucky to co-found this company with men and women who are feminists at heart, and the men even more so than the women. They are good allies, and I haven't felt within the team challenges as a woman leader. One of the things that is the most important to say is that every day, and I take my country, Haiti, as an example, when it comes to funding, being in a leadership position as a woman is a constant obstacle, especially when you go seek funds in the traditional banking system. Then it's in French, and they say it's a calvaire. You have to go through jumps, hoops and hoops to prove yourself, what men would not have to do. And this is one of the, I think one of the biggest obstacle to overcome, this barrier that is in front of women leaders, women entrepreneurs when it comes to seeking funding. And then there are also the self-inflicted constraints that we give to ourselves, the culpability of not spending enough time with the kids, or not being there, or not being at home to do certain things. Constraints that should be shared among both genders, men and women, but that we self-inflict to ourselves. And one of the things I would say to people is, to women wanting to seek for leadership positions, and is to not let that kind of social pressure and culpability stop you, because we can do it all.
Thank you. Okay. Bernadette, I'm going to move to you, and I think it's good because Kalinda talked about financing. But Bernadette, before we go there, you also deserve a belated congratulations. On International Women's Day, you were nominated as one of the top 50 women in sustainable finance in 2022 in the Netherlands. Gefeliciteerd. Just building on some of the challenges and concerns that Kalinda raised, Bernadette, from the perspective of an investor, which Big Capital is, first of all, you will be well aware that when we do look at, I would have to agree with her, when we do look at the evidence of what's going on with SDG 7 and with climate action, that the data shows that there are significant investment gaps in investing in women-led companies. But I'm really excited about the work that Big Capital is doing, and would like you to share your experiences about how you are promoting gender lens investment in the clean cooking sector.
Thank you, Sheila, and a pleasure to be here. So I'm director of Big Capital. We started off already years ago, and it was a big challenge, because what Big Capital is actually addressing is there are many people that lack access to impact products that can really improve their lives, like clean cooking stoves, clean cooking appliances. And also there are social enterprises that struggle to get access, and these social enterprises are actually targeting the underserved population, but struggle to get access to working capital. At the same time, both these social enterprises and their customers, the underserved populations, are generating significant impact when using the products. And also there are donors and companies out there that are actually interested to buy this type of impact when it's actually realized. So the issue was there. Big Capital was looking at the solution. What we do is we pre-finance impact receivables. So we started off with, and that's what we've done up to today, I would say, or almost. We started off with pre-financing the social enterprises that are active in targeting underserved populations and providing, well, not only clean cook stoves, but primarily clean cook stoves, I would say. And we finance them with a working capital facility, pre-financing facility, and we are repaid when the products are actually generating carbon credits. So the focus is primarily been on pre-financing these carbon credits that are actually pre-sold to governments, donors, also sometimes corporates, to offset their footprint. But I'm very glad, and maybe you heard already, because it has been also presented, that we actually are part now of the Clean Impact Bond, which was developed by one of our initiators, Cardano Development, and some other stakeholders. And what they actually did, and it took them, it's amazing, but it took them about 4 to 5 years to develop this and make it work. Because what they have done, they worked with companies, with donors, with investors like Bix Capital to actually develop a similar structure as we are doing with the carbon credits, and to generate, so monetize actually health credits and gender credits. And how it works is that we provide pre-financing to Sistema, biogas digesters they are delivering in Kenya. And we are actually repaid by these future health credits that are and gender credits. And the gender credits are already pre-sold to Osprey Foundation. So really happy with them, because we need business models. That's also to actually scale the gender focused financing or gender impacts is really how to attract investors. I think we were the first of its kind fund actually doing this, primarily focusing on carbon credits. But of course, there are other externalities that come out of the use of the clean cook stoves, so like the gender and health credits. So the whole objectives of this clean impact bond, because the financing has been quite small also for BICS, but it's not about this specific financing. It's more about showing and developing a scalable, replicable model that can be used by others, so to monetize gender credits. And so that's, I think, key for investors, including ourselves, but we should not be the only ones, to really share our knowledge, share our data, so that, and also share our frameworks, for instance, and then maybe even the legal documentation, so others can replicate it, and so that we can all together develop this market. So we are now actually fully invested, almost. By the end of this year, we are fully invested with Bix Capital, and it's a relatively small investment fund, impact investment fund, with 18 million. But I'm really proud to share that we announced at the beginning of this week, when we had our investor meeting. So the likes like FMO, IFC, DFC and Shell Foundation are our investors, and they have confirmed that they will support us in the scale-up of Bix Capital. So we are planning to launch Bix 2 in the Q1 of next year. And that will be much more also focusing on women empowerment. We have done that already, but now we also want to make it more tangible. So aligning with the 2X Challenge objectives also. So looking indeed at women-owned companies more, and also helping them. So if they need, for instance, some capacity development, we also want to make that available to make their businesses comply with our criteria if that's necessary. And but also, so as consumers, we are already really looking at the women, but not only, so also women-owned businesses, and also as employees in these social enterprises. So really great to see all the other examples this week. Although there are investors out here, but it would be great if at the next forum there could even be more investors present.
Thank you, thank you. And it'd be great if we could see more investors with a product like the gender credits, like you had. And I think Energia, with support from Get Invest, is actually doing some research, and we'll be coming out with a toolkit and with a report that's really looking at what are the key challenges but opportunities to really put the money in the hands of women, from financial service providers and from investors. And what you said about having a product that is really tailored to the needs of the women customer segments, of investors, and also at the different stages of growth of businesses is where the key answer is. So congratulations on the Big Two. And this leads to my, my next question, to look at it from a demand side. how can we, or how is the next, in January, you said it's going to start in January, I believe, next year, when your next fund starts and it's going to scale up. How can that be used to enhance financial support and market access for women-led and women-owned initiatives and enterprises?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it will be one of our key focuses in BICS 2. It hasn't been so far in BICS Capital, and we were we did not prefer men-owned companies, of course, but it has not been the focus. I think it will be more focus in BICS 2. And I guess we will look out for them, but I always think the women should also look out for us and try to find us and see what we are actually, what type of finance we are providing. And at the same time, I'm already preparing my investment people. And that I think we should also be flexible, because that's also what you get out of research, that sometimes women have a maybe slightly different risk appetite than men-owned businesses. Let's see if that's really the case. But if so,
area of research. So what I want to say is, if you want to fund something, if entrepreneurs are bringing their concept, let's try to make sure that women are properly represented. You mentioned that the statistics of women in renewable energy sector is way below 40%. And then this is because we are not encouraging women enough. When you come to Ghana, I'm from Ghana. When you come to Ghana, you realize that most of the interventions or most of the manufacturing and design companies are predominated by men. And sometimes, if you are not passionate to make a change like we do at the grassroots level, and you are a woman, you'll be left at the bench and you cannot make any meaningful contribution. Unless you are passionate to change something, that is when the voice of the woman comes to play. So we would want to mainstream gender activities and research and give women a slot when it comes to research funding and research, everything related to funding and support for the clean cooking sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rejoice. So I really like the way you started by saying that it's important to have research so that we can have evidence-based interventions, whether it's in finance, in policy, or in investment, and that bringing a women's perspective into that evidence is really critical for shaping the solutions that we're trying to, and interventions that we're trying to drive. Thank you. And I just also wanted to say, we're talking a lot about STEM, but I truly believe, having studied veterinary medicine myself, and then gender and development, that I think we need to move beyond. It's not just engineers that we need. We need lawyers, we need financiers, you need sociologists as well within the sector. So it's really looking across the board and bringing the women's talent in that. But Rejoice, my last question to you is through the lens of a young person. You're an African, and the UN informs us that 60% of the entire continent is below the age of 25, making Africa the youngest continent in the world in relation to its population makeup. And this is really a tremendous asset. So I was wondering if you could share, as the last intervention on the panel, your thoughts, Rejoice, to other young women about why you're passionate, and we could see that definitely from when you were speaking. I almost wanted, because the passion was so much, I wanted to ask them to reduce the volume. But it was very, very passionate, and thank you for that. So why are you passionate about educating and empowering women as solution makers in the clean energy transition? And give us advice as to how you feel that they can really scale up. We can really scale up their investments in clean cooking energy. Thank you.
Okay. So the reason why I'm passionate about women involvement is that when you look at the global population, we form about 49.58% of the global population. And then we are looking at a workforce where, as you rightly mentioned, the entire value chain, right from manufacturing to design to sale to policy to financing, we want representation. So if we don't promote women's involvement in these areas, then there's going to be a huge deficit in terms of workforce. And we are the greater population when it comes to the clean cooking agenda or the clean cooking discussions. So it is very important that when we are educated to know the effect of what we do to the environment, to the climate, to the next generation, the motivation becomes intrinsic. So now I know that if I cook with dirty fuel, I might get cataract, I might get heart attack. Then why would I want to die from this particular kind of cooking approach? So when women are educated and empowered to know the consequence of our actions, then when we are making a decision, we don't have to spend hours and hours trying to convince the end user, because we know that when we do something, when we use the dirty fuel, these are going to be the adverse effect. And then I would also want to say that we should also go a step further and then put on our screens everywhere we go in our homes. We should try to educate the general public on the side effect of clean cooking. The discussion should not end in this room. Because when children wake up in the morning and they see these things on their screens, in their classrooms, at the bus stops, everywhere projecting the clean cooking conversation, then it becomes very easy and sweet for us. So I would like to say that in conclusion, that all of us needed to make this thing very achievable. I want to say that it's very realistic. If we want to do it, it's possible. Identify your niche area within the chain. All of us gathered here in this room, we have a role to play. I am a researcher, someone is an advocate, someone is a policymaker, someone is a marketer, the value chain is very broad. The spectrum is huge. So identify what you can do and intrinsically try to support so that the transition becomes very easy and swift. Thank you.
Very much. So we all have a role to play, and education is also critical, particularly education starting from the young all the way through. Thank you very much. I'll now like to open up the discussion to the floor and invite questions, invite interventions from you. I'll just ask, I think there's a microphone. Am I correct? There's a microphone, so that will be there if you could use your microphone. And I'll just ask that when you have the mic, if you could just state your name, your organization, and please, if you could keep your questions concise and to the point. Thank you. I invite our first questions, interventions. One, yes, thank you. Is that 3-second or 7-second gap when people are thinking who's going to be the first one courageous enough? Yes.
So thank you very much. My name is Kovia from Sequest Capital. I come from Uganda. I was really enjoying what you people were discussing, but we have to appreciate the fact that when it comes to gender message to the communities, sometimes it has a lot of policies and big people who are exposed. They're the ones who know the message much. But we don't tend to take this message to the village, the most remote areas. So when we take our concept of gender issues to the community, we also tend to mobilize the women aside and leave out the men. Not knowing when it comes to family cultures of Africa, some African families, decisions are being made by men. For the woman to be involved into leadership or to take up a part in clean energy or any other thing that we have, they have to seek for permission from their husbands. So how can we involve these men in our conversation so that they are able to appreciate the fact that these women are not just coming in to lead the entire family and forfeit the values of being a woman in an African traditional way, so that even our families are protected, the children are protected, and there is no serious separation out of so much empowerment of women and leaving out the men from understanding what we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that excellent point about certainly it's very important that we engage men in the conversation and in our interventions. There were two, I think the gentleman over there and yes, Linda behind, and then...
Yeah. Linda Davis from Kenya, Giraffe Bioenergy, a producer of ethanol cooking fuel. My question is around policy. I know we have a Kenya agenda policy in Kenya. I'm just curious if there are other jurisdictions with a similar policy on gender and how that is being implemented and if there are any early results that we can learn from.
Thank you. Linda, could you hand it to the gentleman in front of you and then we'll come back. Thank you.
I'm Donald Amragu from Ghana. I am a designer, stove designer, a builder, and I'm here to empower the women. Because as a field worker, you go places and especially those of us who went to secondary schools in Ghana, the kitchens where the meals are prepared, there's no black in this room that is darker than the rooms because they've put for years and the soot has covered the walls and everything. One example that we do is that when we create a chimney after the new stove, we ask them to go outside and see the smoke coming out. And then we tell them, this smoke will have gone inside your body if we did not do this. That is when the impact hits them hard. So we want to ask. I didn't go to the other room. I decided to come here because some of us are in the field. So we want to say that the voice of the woman or the lady must be heard louder. school feeding program in Ghana, the same problem. I'm sure a lot of ladies will buy African soap, what we call alatasamina. I don't know how you call it. It's not, they'll buy it. I'm sure they are going to buy it before they go. But if you have seen where it is prepared, they still use as 3 stones. And even the ministers, the policymakers, when we tell them we have a design that can make soap, that can make oil, that's palm oil, that can boil king cake, banku, all those ones, nobody seems to listen. Even corn beer is done by ladies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't know if there's one more question. If not, okay, just one, and then we will go back I'll come back to my speakers for some reflections on that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks to all the panelists. My name is Ifi Ikono from MTech Energy. So my question really is on the policy side. I did listen to the Deputy Minister talk about how far Kenya has gone. I work within the ECOWAS space, and I know that we've had an ECOWAS policy on gender mainstreaming, and there's actually also a directive. But the biggest challenge that we've had in West Africa is getting that policy up from the drawing board and actually into implementation. So, on paper, it reads well, it's excellent, it's beautiful, but realistically, no one is doing anything, basically. So I work on the policy side, and I'm trying to push, the ECOWAS institutions to see how we can get things, really moving. So it would be nice to hear from your perspective how you were able to pass that hurdle, because for me, that is a big, big challenge in terms of translating policies into action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask for reflections from our panelists. Faith, maybe I'll start with you. There were 2 questions, one specifically about the Kenya policy. The second one is about the ECOWAS policy. And again, I don't know if you're working with ICRI, but ECOWAS is still the only regional policy on gender and energy, so congratulations on that, but really about the implementation and other questions. So I'll start with Faith and then open up to the others to talk about the issue of engaging men. Congratulations, thank you so much for coming to the session and having men champions like we have, but maybe we can also speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. What I would say about implementation of policies is that, once you've done the policy, then you take one policy, a policy statement, and you break it down. I don't know what example to give, but you have one broad statement that describes the end action that you want. Then breaking it down means you have to strategize. You do the strategy, and then you define the specific actions that go into achieving that strategy. That is the way you get a policy to be implemented. And the action plan gives you now the line items to put into your program implementation, and it ensures that you also get financial allocation, because unless you have very clear activities that you have defined to lead you to where you want, and you have also to say that these actions are leading me to achieving this specific policy. That is how you translate into action. So without that action plan, you really cannot just have a statement put into a policy and then you say, we have a policy. That policy statement must be taken forward beyond the policy document. There are other documents that you develop after that. If I could give the example of the SE for All action agenda, is a policy document that spelled out the policy for clean cooking in Kenya and said that we want to achieve this by 2030. So after that policy was stated, then we sat down and said, what exactly do we need to get to this universal clean cooking by 2030? Then you break it down. If it is biogas, what do you want to do on biogas? If it is ethanol, what do you want to do on ethanol? Define all the actions that you want to do, put targets onto them, put timelines onto them, and put financial estimates onto them. That is my experience. I would also like to talk about, I don't know, the other question on policy, I didn't hear it properly. Linda, I don't know. Linda, what was your concern?
learn from of an effective gender policy that's translated into impact? I think you've answered that already, but you can elaborate.
No, I haven't come across other gender policies. I think when we were starting, Sheila mentioned that the Kenyan gender and in energy policy was the first of its kind. And we are experiencing it as we go along. With the time, maybe we may need to change it because based on what we have encountered along the implementation process. But for us, it's the first of its kind. We did not have a benchmark when we were developing this policy. So I think there are other things that other countries can learn from us in terms of implementing a gender policy in the energy sector. I would just like to comment on the inclusion of men in the gender mainstreaming discussion. This is something that we are already doing. You know, we understand that gender is not just about women. We only put women at the forefront because in African societies, we've been highly patriarchal, and we need to bring the women forward and bring them at par with okay, maybe I should not use the word at par, but there's that desire for equality or at some level. So what we do in projects is when we are talking about gender mainstreaming, we don't just front the issues of women. For example, in the GCF climate-friendly cooking project that we are implementing in Kenya, what we are doing is when you are doing some baseline studies, you are going to households to interview people. You don't just go to interview the women because you are talking about clean cooking. We have an awareness creation strategy. It's called a behavior change and communication strategy. Within that strategy, there's provision to treat women as the primary audience for awareness creation. Then we have also put men as the secondary audience for awareness creation. So in that process, you are not just talking to the women, but you also talk to the men because of the role they play in enabling the women to acquire the technology for use in clean cooking. So these are things that we are already implementing within our specific projects and programs in bringing forward the concerns that, gender does not just refer to women. Include the men, include the people with disabilities, and all these things. It's a whole discussion. So we are doing it. I don't know whether others are doing it, but I think that is the direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Faith. Is there anyone else who'd like to respond to? No, I think, Linda, you okay, please.
Doctor, I totally agree with you. When you talk about men as allies, we have to consider the big gap that we have to bridge in making our own voice being heard. I'm going to make a little joke, and do not take it bad. I was very happy about your intervention. But if you look at the audience, there were 4 interventions, and the longer was the one from the men. So the men are usually better at us at advocating for what's important for them. And we need to take cues from them on how do they do that, how they move their agenda forward and make these tools, these strategies, these tactics ours. I think that when there is an unequal relationship, the one on top usually does not have a lot of interest in making it equal. There are exceptions, of course, and these champions, we cherish them. But in general, that's the case. So one of the important strategy is to make them see how good it is for everyone when through clean cooking, women are empowered. And I take the example of my country where there's almost 60% of women in the country. When you make them more productive through clean cooking, it's the whole society that goes forward. And I think that these are the arguments that have to be used to gather the men around these issues so they can become real allies. Because at the end of the day, you push for what you really believe in and what is in your interest.
Thank you very much. I have to bring this to a close. I see that we're almost coming to the hour. And in order to do this, I'd like to ask you all our panelists, to leave us with a few words of wisdom. And this is really 1 or 2 sentences, not more than that. As we are continuing with the rest of the forum, but also as we're leaving the forum and going back to our work and to our countries, what few keywords of wisdom would you like to leave with our audience? I'm going to start with you, Bernadette. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all are active in this space. We need to continue with our activities, share lessons learned, and also bring people in that are not yet involved in the sector. And for instance, we worked many years, it was very difficult to set up BICS Capital with only 18 million. We are now actually scaling it to 80 million, 80. So, and that's also thanks to the perseverance of the team of BICS Capital and all the investors around it and supporting it.
And congratulations on that scale up. Rejoice?
Okay, so I would like to encourage all of us to own the clean cooking transition process. It is for us. Every woman in this room, every woman everywhere, it is our business. Let's own it and make sure that until we achieve our target, it is not done. Thank you.
For me, I think the world is certainly a better place with women promoted as leaders than without. And this is mainly because of their change makers. And because of also their changing roles within the household, within the society. They deal with all kinds of things now rather than being confined to the household. Their changing roles demand that they be included in leadership positions. And if we are really thinking about a just and inclusive transition for energy, then it cannot happen without women in leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faith. Kalinda?
I think I encourage everyone to continue their work around 4 things: mentoring, innovation, networking, and partnerships. Mentoring, because there's nothing more rewarding than helping others, and providing capacity to others also gives you the advantage of having a bigger circle of allies with capacity. Innovation, we have a long way to go, and we can take shortcuts with the new tools that exist, whether it's mobile money, using social media, etc. Networking, there's a lot of people out there who are living the exact same experience that we have with the same constraints, and talking to each other can help us. And finally, partnerships. The value chains and the clean cookings are very long, and trying to take everything on our back can be exhausting. So partner with others so that we can divide the task and conquer.
Thank you very much. So with those words, we have come to the end of our session, and I'm just going to sort of paraphrase what has been said here together by wonderful and esteemed panelists, but also paraphrase the words of, for me, 3 very important gender champions of our current time. So we're talking about the Second Lady of Ghana in the clean cooking sector. We're talking about Dimfna, Damiola, and Mary Robinson, who are, for me, great models of change. And to paraphrase what they have said, forward-thinking actors that are looking to drive a just and inclusive energy transition are those that engage the potential of women as change agents and as an opportunity for growth and resilient pathways of change, and believe in gender-inclusive interventions as smart business practices and the right and just thing to do and way forward. Thank you. Please join me and have a very good day.